Hello, welcome back to a new tier video where today I've got the Twitch and YouTube guys helping me make the decisions. So they're not being held captive, they're here because they want to be here, regardless of what the chat says. So we've got Fable villains from Fable 2, Fable 3 and Fable the Journey. And they're going to help me. We've got the S tier, A, B, C and D, and we'll just kind of try and figure it out as we go. So let's begin. So first off, we've got Captain Dredd. A lot of his story isn't told in the game, but in the Reaver book, we find out that Captain Dredd was actually killed by Reaver when Reaver went onto his boat, and Reaver shot a lantern, melting Captain Dredd, and he died. His crew also died with him, but he's like a legendary pirate, and he's quite difficult to fight. I went down a lot when I was fighting him. I think he's a great villain. I think we should do this with kind of their backstory in mind as well, because it's kind of important, because it's not a great villain if you don't have a good backstory, is it? So I'd automatically kind of think of Captain Dredd as kind of a mid-tier villain. I think he definitely suits a C because he does have a good backstory and, you know, he's a nice part of Reaver's story, isn't he? So we've got Captain Dredd on C. So next off, we have one of my favorite villains, Chesty. Chesty's definitely considered a villain. A little girl called Myrtle was murdered and put in a chest by her schoolmates, and the teacher covered it up, and Chesty's from the village of Oakvale. Even though they're evil and they want you to play with them forever, which means dying, they're still a great villain. And with that great backstory, I think Chesty gets an A, yeah. The side quests with Chesty are definitely really enjoyable, and even in Fable 3, you get to visit Chesty. Chesty's more than just an evil box. Chesty has a personality and kind of makes you work for the reward, and you get the Diamond of Sorrow, and the best part is that Chesty guilts you when you beat them, but they let you go. A good villain with kind of good morals, I guess. I'd like Chesty to return in a new Fable game. Okay, so next up, we have the original Commandant. So Lucian was trying to create an army, so basically what he did is he started experimenting with pieces of the Spire in test subjects, and the Commandant was created when the pieces of the Shard gave test subjects abilities. They were kind of sired to Lucian to do their bidding, and this is the Commandant that always tells you to obey, and I think it's the one that makes you kill Bob, which I did. B definitely feels right for the Commandant just because he isn't in it that much. He's definitely memorable. He's powerful enough to kidnap Garth. Yeah, so definitely a B for the Commandant. Next up, we have Connor. So Connor was part of Fable 3 and he was kicked out of Silver Pines because he fell asleep on watch. And then he was basically put in charge of the Balverines, and he stole that statue which allowed him to control the Balverines. I think that's what the statue did. So Connor was definitely one of the more memorable villains for me, and I won't lie, I normally sided with him as well. I don't think he ranks like a Commandant or even a Captain Dredd. I'd say C, yeah, I'd agree with Arby. I think although he is one of the memorable villains of Fable 3, I don't think he's on the same level as the Commandant, so it just feels right for him to be with Captain Dredd. Yeah, that's about right. So moving on, we have the Crawler. So the Crawler is the main antagonist of Fable 3, so he's one of the main villains. He is trapped in a dungeon in Aurora, and then when Teresa activates the Spire, it reawakens the Crawler, and through his abilities, his children then attack Aurora and decimate the population. That instantly jumps to A or S tier for me. If a villain has the ability to destroy a whole continent, like when we get to Aurora in Fable 3, the whole population has been decimated, and Logan goes to Aurora as kind of one person, like he wants to like help Bowerstone, and he comes back and completely changes who he is. Yeah, he's not that memorable. Okay, we'll compromise. He's definitely top tier. So should we put him as an A? I would have thought S, but I'll go with the general consensus. Next is Darius Zing. So when in Fable 2, when you collect all of the fragments where you get attacked by the assassins, it gives you a map to get access to the Higher Ones Guild, and then Darius Zing is the boss from that. I always found the Highwayman really, really irritating because they were just sponges for damage and they just never seem to go down. Asking you guys, do you recognize Darius Zing? Because I'd forgotten about him, and then when I was looking through all of the villains, that's when I was reminded of him. Considering that he's not that memorable, and he just seems like one of those enemies that is a bit of a sponge that just takes you damage. A D? I think maybe he fits in the D. Next up, we have the Darkness. Basically, when William Black entered the Void for the first time where he met Jack of Blades, he contracted a disease. Many, many years later, he went back into the Void. When he was a hero, he had his kingdom, and he basically expelled this disease back into the Void. And some say it was basically a darker version of William, and he wanted to re-enter Albion to reclaim it for his own. I think that's the lore behind it. He is basically the one that created the Crawler, the corruption, all of the evil that happens in Fable 3 and Fable the Journey. So with the Darkness, where do we think it should land? Although we don't get to meet the Darkness, the fact that it is behind all of the evil that happens in 3 and the Journey, if the Crawler's an A, then the Darkness has to be an S. So next we have Dash. So Dash makes a brief appearance. When you enter Rookridge, you have to chase him, and then I think you just shoot him once or throw a fireball and then he's dead. As he's not a true villain in the, the standard sense, I'd say maybe D. C, but dialogue gives him a B. Okay, so you've bartered me up to a C. Okay, Dash at a C. Okay, so I'll do the Journey in a collection. I don't think many guys have played the Journey. So we have the Harbinger, the Temptress, and the Devourer. And basically, they're just magical beings created by the Darkness, and you just fling a few spells at them and they die. With the help of Teresa, obviously. Bear in mind, Gabriel kills these, and he's not truly a hero. They're basically the Darkness's best army, and they've been sent in to corrupt Albion. Highest I would give them is a C. There's not a lot of lore behind them. They're kind of meh villains. Okay, moving on to Whisper. So Whisper isn't a villain in the traditional sense, but she is a great adversary and you do go up against her in the arena. So in my last video, I was told that I wasn't fair on Whisper, and so I'll admit I wasn't. It was a bit of a meme for the channel. So Whisper is a hero that trains with you in Fable 1. She's constantly under the the shadow of her older brother Thunder, who's a Fable, he's a legendary hero. I would rate her quite highly. She's strong enough to make it to the Witchwood Arena, isn't she? And not all heroes are able to do that. So only heroes of legendary status are able to fight in the Witchwood Arena. That's the consideration we've got to have for Whisper. As a hero, she's great. I think she is of legendary status, but when it comes to her being a villain, and we've got to take into account how evil and kind of a backstory, I'd say C. She's very, very capable and she can handle herself, but she's not truly evil. She's just trying to get out of the shadow of her older brother who just kind of belittles her. D for sure. Okay, the chat has spoken. We're going to put Whisper to a D, and that's not because she's not capable. It's because she just isn't a true villain. Okay, next up we have Ernest Faraday. He is very talented with technology. Before Reva Industries was Reva Industries, it was Faraday Industries. He created all the contraptions like the monorail, that kind of stuff. And after Logan came back from Aurora, he was desperate for an army to fight against the darkness that was coming. So he told Ernest, build me a robot army. Ernest said no, and so then he was sent to Ravenscar Keep, and he was just held there because he refused an order from Logan. Anyway, when you enter Ravenscar Keep, he's escaped and he's created his own robots, and I think he's quite a formidable foe. And he's got a good backstory as well. So basically he was imprisoned because he didn't agree to something from the king, because he didn't want to create a robot army. Now, I think he's very, very capable. I think he was one of the harder bosses for that DLC. I'd be thinking a B. I think he would be along the lines of the Commandant, just because that boss battle is quite difficult. Okay, For the next villain, we have Mary Godwin. So Mary is also part of the Traitors Keep DLC. I've not looked too much into her backstory, but she is the one that creates the different coloured hobs, and I think that takes talent. And she's a great boss battle as well. So I think I'd put her in maybe B or C just because, again, she was another challenging foe. It wasn't like a dash where you just shoot him and then he falls down. I think C or B for Mary Godwin. I think that's where we can differentiate the fact that although she does like create the multicolored hobs, she is less memorable than Ernest Faraday, who has a great backstory and is a great fight. So we'll put her on C because she's less memorable. The next enemy, or villain we have, I don't know if I count this as a villain, but because it was basically the final boss battle in Fable 2, I put the Great Shard on there. Now, this battle I fought multiple times and you have to literally just wait for the thing to open to shoot lightning at it or shoot a gun at it. It was just, the shards got quite repetitive after a while in the game, didn't they? It doesn't have a great backstory, it's just a construct created by Lucian to kind of fight you, and it blows up Reaver's ship. So I think it's safe to say that this deserves to be maybe C or D tier. I'd say just because it doesn't have a backstory, it's not a true villain, it's a boss battle, and it's basically the boss battle we didn't get with Lucian. Okay, moving on, we've got Jack of Blades, both forms. We'll start with the original Jack of Blades. So as we know where this is gonna go, don't we? We can't, I'm gonna try and justify, I'm gonna explain why it deserves to be where it is. Okay, so Jack is the hero of heroes. Although he's not a hero in the traditional sense, his mask is a conduit for his soul, and basically he tricks heroes of Albion to wear the mask, and then he basically possesses them and acquires their powers, and he has his own demonic powers as well. So Jack is responsible for all of the evil that happens in Fable. I think it's safe to say that Jack automatically gets an S tier because he's Jack of Blades, and when you think of Fable and you think of the villains in Fable, the first one you think of is Jack of Blades. I don't think of Lucian, and I don't think of the Crawler or the Darkness, I think of Jack. So Jack in his original form definitely deserves to be in the S tier because he is the villain of Fable and he's the one that people want to return in Playground's Fable. Now that Jack in his original form's out of the way, let's move on to Jack the Dragon. So as the chat have said, it seemed like a bit of a repetitive enemy. Although I think he's epic, Jack Round 2 isn't an S tier. Maybe he deserves to be an A tier because, again, he has some great lines of dialogue, but it's not the battle that we got with Jack A. Jack B, it just felt like you're just waiting for him to land to strike, and it was just a bit repetitive. He matches with Ernest and the Commandant though, or would he fit in with the Crawler and Chesty? I knew that Jack would always be one of the conflicting ones. Jack A, as his original form, definitely deserves to be S. In my head, I thought it would be an S as well, but from the chat, I can see there's a bit of confliction there. Why don't we put him in B? Because then it's making up for everybody's opinion. I don't know. I like Dragon Jack. I'm not sure if he deserves to be in B. Okay, so next up we have Logan. Logan is the antagonist of the first part of Fable 3. The whole of Albion hates him. You later learn that he was just stressed because he knew the darkness was coming. I'd say he becomes villainous, but he's pushed to that point by Teresa. So where does Logan deserve to be? Let's go down the list. So S. Logan doesn't deserve to be with the darkness or Jack. Does he deserve to be with Chesty and the Crawler? So the chat believes that Logan should be a B because he's not a true villain. He's kind of forced in that position by Teresa. I think I agree with that. The fact that he's simply a corrupt king, he's not a true villain. He's just kind of forced into that position by Teresa. And he helps you when you take over the throne because he realizes that you are the more powerful kind of ruler. Okay, next up we have Lucian. My opinion of Lucian is that he's just useless. He's just a man that is sad that his family's died, and again, he's one of those people that was driven to madness by Teresa. And I think the thing we should take from this is the final confrontation with him. You literally shoot him. So Instantly, I think that Lucian deserves to be lower tier because he is just kind of useless. He's just an angry man that's lost everything and has been manipulated. He also killed 2 kids. Yeah, killing kids is bad. So B or C? I'd say to put him in C just because he's just a desperate man, but he's a villain, but I can't justify putting him any higher than Mary or Dash or Connor. He just happens to be in a position of power and he takes advantage of it, but that final boss battle doesn't justify him going any further. Next up, I think we have a fan favorite, and that's Maze. So Maze, he grew up in Hut Coast, and on a day out with his parents, his family were attacked by Balverines. His mum and dad were killed, but he was saved by Jack, and from that he was indebted to servitude to Jack for the rest of his life. By the time of the hero of Oakvale, when he's born, Maze saves the child, seeing potential in him, hoping that this kid, when he grows up, will save him in the future from Jack. So Maze, all he wants to do is be free from Jack. When the hero goes to Bargate Prison, he kind of sees that, oh, my opportunity's gone, and I think I'm stuck with this. So then he continues with Jack's plan, and that's why you have that final fight with him. Okay, so I think Maze definitely ranks maybe S or A. I think Maze definitely deserves to be an A. He's forced into this life by Jack, and he has to follow his rule, otherwise he'll die. And his death is quite sad. Moving on, we have Commander Milton. He is in charge of the prison and it becomes overrun. Anyway, it's just a trap to lure the hero of Brightwall so that he can get you to sit in the chair so that that chair can absorb your abilities, so then he can basically become a clone of you. So in essence, Commander Milton essentially becomes a hero and fights you with your abilities, and he's very powerful. I died many times fighting Commander Milton. So I'd put Commander Milton above Ernest. Would Commander Milton be along the lines of Chesty, the Crawler, and Maze though? I think he's definitely a worthy villain. Because the concept was great, I'd definitely put him as a B. That works. He is challenging to fight, but then again, I wouldn't put him in the same league as Chesty or Maze or the Crawler. Okay, so next up we have Nigel Ferret. He's basically a low-life thug in Bowerstone, and he's very irritating because he speaks with these words that I don't think he understands. Again, I wouldn't put him in the villain in the standard villain sense. He wouldn't be along the lines of the major villains because he is quite forgettable. I'd say D. And next up we have Rex. Rex is the person that you meet as a kid in Fable 2 where I believe he hits the dog. So although he's not a true villain, I thought I'd just add him anyway because he headbutts Rose. So I think as he's not a true villain, we'll put him at D. I just wanted to put him in there because I like him. Okay, up next we have Captain Seika from Fable 3. Again, he's just the standard boss that you go up against. That seems to be the trend with Fable, doesn't it? You go up against kind of a bandit and then you decide whether they live or die. So Seika for me is probably lower tier. Instantly, I'm thinking that he belongs in the C tier because he's kind of memorable, but he's not like a true villain. So we'll put him in C. He puts up more of a fight than Lucian. That was an easy one. Next up is one of the more difficult members of Fable 3 that I definitely struggled with a lot. So Lieutenant Simmons, he was a part of the Swift Brigade and then he died and then he came back as a Hollow Man. This guy was just a sponge for damage and was super difficult to fight, and I died multiple times fighting this guy. But then again, I'm just probably terrible at the game. I'd say Lieutenant Simmons is memorable because Morningwood is memorable as well. So I would say he definitely deserves to be kind of mid-tier, low to mid-tier. C? I think that's safe. Yeah, C kind of works. I think that makes sense. He is basically the same as Seika. They're both sponges for damage. They don't really have backstories. Not true villains. Next up we have Thag. So Thag is basically the carbon copy of Seika but put into a different game. So I'll instantly think that Seika should go into the C tier. He kicks your dog. That makes him a villain in my book. Next we have Teresa. So I didn't think that Teresa was a villain up until the point that I started researching the lore videos and I realized that she was behind most of the evil things that happened in Albion. With Teresa though, she's basically doing it for the greater good. She's manipulating, she's basically playing chess, and each character in Fable is a chess piece, and she's just trying to fix a mistake she made. Yeah, I think Teresa deserves to be an S just because all of the evil actions that happen in the Fable series, apart from Fable 1, is because of her. She's manipulating everything. The reason that the Crawler wakes up is because Teresa reactivates the Spire. The reason that Lucian goes nuts is because she convinces him, using her abilities, to build the Spire so that he can bring back his family. The reason that the Darkness influences Albion is because of her. So Teresa, in my mind, instantly goes to S-Class. Although she's morally grey, she's doing evil actions to fix her mistake. But it's evil regardless. She's responsible for Rose dying. Next up, we have Twinblade. Now, Twinblade is definitely a memorable part of Fable. He is not middle tier at all. Twinblade was a hero. He is a hero that trained at the guild, but because he didn't agree with the way that the running of it went, he left and became a bandit. But he didn't just become a traditional bandit. He united all of the bandit clans around Albion and united them into one force where he became the Bandit King. And that ability alone, as well as his ability to fight really, really well, instantly puts him in the S-Class or the A-Class for me. And again, he's memorable, and he helps Teresa. B or A? I think that Twinblade deserves to be A. He's not a true villain, because he can be redeemed, and I think he definitely fits in with Maze as well. He's just kind of a tragic character, isn't he? He's just trying to get a better life for his bandits, so that works. And finally, Reaver. Reaver, we meet him in Fable 2, and he basically manipulates you into going to the Shadow Court to give them the seal. What he doesn't tell the hero is that giving this seal to the Shadow Judges puts you in his curse where you age and he remains young. Reaver is also responsible for the destruction of the village of Oakvale and turning it into Wraithmarsh for his own greed. Reaver, as a villain, automatically goes into S-Class or A-Class for me. And in Fable 3, he just wants to do evil things and he kills the workers, he makes them work under awful circumstances, and he's definitely a villain. And he just matches along the lines of Teresa and Jack. And it's not because he's a difficult enemy to fight, because you don't fight him, but because of the villainous story he has. He destroyed a village for his youth. So we'll go through the tiers and change anything if we don't agree with it. So first we have S tier. So we have the Darkness, Jack, Teresa, and Reaver. I think that they all deserve to be there. Definitely. I wouldn't change anybody there. A tier, we have Chesty, the Crawler, Maze, and Twinblade. They deserve to be there. All of the memorable villains in Albion. B tier, we have the Commandant, Ernest Faraday, Jack Volume 2, Logan, and Commander Milton. Again, all great foes to go against, all memorable, all deserve to be there. C, we have Captain Dredd, Connor, Dash, the three villains from Fable the Journey, Mary Godwin, Lucian, Captain Saker, Lieutenant Simmons, and Thag. Again, they're all kind of there. And finally, the lowest tier, we have Darius Zing, Whisper, the Giant Shard, Nigel Ferret, and Rex. Again, the only one I think I'm unhappy with there is Whisper, because I feel like she does deserve to be higher. But again, she's more of an adversary than a villain. So I'm very happy with that. And this time, I properly listened to people's suggestions on where people should go. So that was the tier list. Thank you to my Discord, Twitch, and YouTube for helping me decide these. I definitely took on board everybody's opinions this time to try and make it more balanced. And if you do want to join us for one of these streams, then definitely join the Discord, my Twitter, and my Instagram to be updated when I'm going to do them. I'm thinking I'll do a locations one next for all of the games like Brightwall, Oakvale, Wraithmarsh, that kind of thing. So if you want to be a part of that, definitely come and hang out in the streams and you can kind of have your say. I want to thank my patrons for always supporting me. If you did like this video, then give it a like. If you disagreed, or if you just have a different view, then please comment your opinions, and I will hopefully see you in the next one. Now guys, enjoy your day. Bye.